In the mid-960s, Norway was a land of shifting power struggles among competing chieftains and warlords. It was during this turbulent period, around 963-964, that Olaf Tryggvason was born into a noble family with deep royal connections. His father, Tryggvi Olafsson, a chieftain in southeastern Norway, was a direct descendant of King Harald Fairhair, the first king to unify Norway. This lineage would later inspire Olaf's own ambitions for kingship and unity.
Exciting news. Before we get into today's video, I've got an amazing opportunity for you. Have you ever wanted to learn Hebrew? Now's your chance. We're offering a unique beginner Hebrew class, and the best part? You set your own budget. That's right, you decide how much you want to invest in your Hebrew learning journey, and we'll review your registration to make it work for you. To get you started, we're offering 3 free introductory classes. No commitments, just a fantastic opportunity to see how enjoyable and rewarding learning Hebrew can be.
Very good, Barak. If you find the beginning of a verb, of a shoresh, one of our 3...
So why wait? Dive into Hebrew today and explore a rich new language and culture. Click the link in the description to sign up now and start your Hebrew journey. All right, let's get back to the video.
However, Olaf's early life was marked by danger and upheaval. Shortly after his birth, his father was betrayed and killed by enemies aligned with the ruling King Harald Greycloak. Fearing for her son's life, Olaf's mother Astrid fled with the infant Olaf, embarking on a perilous journey across the Scandinavian world. They sought refuge in Sweden, where they found protection for a time before moving on to Novgorod, in modern-day Russia. Here they found sanctuary at the court of Prince Vladimir of Kiev, a major center of trade and power in Eastern Europe. During these formative years, Olaf was exposed to a world far beyond the fjords and mountains of Norway. In the bustling courts of Sweden and Novgorod, he encountered warriors, traders, and diplomats from across Europe. This early exile not only kept him safe, but also gave him a broader worldview, which would later influence his vision for Norway and his approach to ruling as a king. Despite being born in a land steeped in Viking pagan traditions, Olaf's fate would eventually draw him towards Christianity, setting him on a path that would change the course of Scandinavian history.
The death of Tryggve Olafsson, Olaf's father, was a pivotal moment in the young boy's life. Assassinated by forces loyal to King Harald Greycloak, Tryggve's murder was not only a personal tragedy, but also a calculated political move to eliminate a potential rival to the throne of Norway. With her husband dead and her infant son's life in imminent danger, Astrid Eiriksdatter, Olaf's courageous mother, was forced to act swiftly. Astrid embarked on a dangerous journey to protect her son. Fleeing Norway, she sought refuge in Sweden, a neighbouring kingdom where she believed Olaf could be safe from his father's killers. However, even in Sweden, threats lingered, and Astrid decided to continue their flight, travelling eastward to the thriving city of Novgorod in the Kievan Rus. At the court of Prince Vladimir of Kiev, Olaf found a new home. The bustling and cosmopolitan court was a stark contrast to the rugged landscapes of Norway. Novgorod, a major hub of trade and cultural exchange, introduced Olaf to a world of diverse peoples, religions, and ideas. Under Vladimir's protection, Olaf grew up amidst the intrigues and splendour of one of the most powerful states in Eastern Europe. This period of exile profoundly shaped Olaf's character. Surrounded by warriors, traders, and diplomats from across the Viking and Slavic worlds, he learned the art of leadership, diplomacy, and battle. It was here that Olaf's ambition began to take root, dreams of reclaiming his birthright and shaping Norway into a unified and powerful kingdom. Though still a child, Olaf's experiences in the Kievan Rus laid the foundation for the ruler he would one day become, setting him on a path toward both vengeance and greatness.
As Olaf Tryggvason grew into a young man, His life took a dramatic turn from exile to action. By the early 970s, he began to carve out his path as a Viking raider, leaving behind the relative safety of the Kievan Rus for the open seas and the promise of adventure, wealth, and glory. This period marked the beginning of his transformation from a royal fugitive to a fearsome warrior and leader. Olaf joined Viking expeditions that plundered the Baltic Sea, England, and Ireland, regions that were rich in both treasure and conflict. In the Baltic, he honed his skills in naval warfare, mastering the art of leading ships and men in battle. His reputation as a cunning and fearless fighter grew as he proved himself in raid after raid, commanding loyalty and respect from his crew. In England, Olaf's raids brought him face to face with the Anglo-Saxons, where he encountered not only fierce resistance, but also the growing influence of Christianity. The monasteries he raided often held treasures of gold and silver, making them prime targets, yet they also exposed Olaf to the Christian faith, seeds of change that would later shape his destiny. Olaf's expeditions extended to Ireland, where the Norse presence was well established in coastal settlements like Dublin. Here he forged alliances with other Viking leaders and gained wealth and power through both trade and conquest. His time in Ireland also reinforced his understanding of leadership, teaching him how to unite disparate groups under a common cause. By the end of this decade, Olaf was no longer just a prince in exile. He had become a seasoned warrior with a formidable reputation. His skills in battle, strategic mind, and relentless drive positioned him as a rising star in the Viking world. This period of raiding and warfare not only enriched him, but also prepared him for the greater challenges to come, reclaiming his heritage in Norway and reshaping the future of Scandinavia.
In 984, Olaf Tryggvason continued his career as a Viking raider, targeting the wealth of England, a land that had long been a favourite prize for Norse warriors. His raids were swift and brutal, striking monasteries and towns along the coast. England's rich abbeys, filled with treasures of gold, silver, and precious manuscripts, became prime targets for Olaf and his fleet. However, amidst the chaos of conquest, an unexpected encounter began to change the course of Olaf's life. While raiding the English coastline, Olaf came into contact with Christian monks and priests. These men, though often victims of his plundering, showed him a faith unlike the pagan beliefs he had grown up with. Their resilience in the face of hardship and their dedication to their god left a lasting impression on the Viking leader. Some accounts suggest that during this time, Olaf may have been captured briefly or sought refuge with Christian communities, giving him a deeper exposure to their teachings. The Christian message of forgiveness, redemption, and eternal life resonated with Olaf, particularly as he began to reflect on his own violent past and the struggles of his early life. Whether through direct interaction with these priests or the influence of captured Christian artifacts and writings, Olaf found himself drawn to the religion of his enemies. This encounter with Christianity planted the seeds of faith in Olaf's heart. Though still a fierce warrior, he began to see the world differently, questioning the old Norse gods and the cycle of bloodshed and vengeance that had defined his life. The experience would soon lead him to embrace Christianity fully, setting him on a path not just to rule Norway, but to reshape its spiritual and cultural identity. For Olaf, this moment marked the beginning of his transformation from Viking raider to Christian king.
By 986, Olaf Tryggvason's encounters with Christianity during his raids in England had left a profound impact on him. Amidst the violence and plunder of his Viking expeditions, Olaf began to see a different path, a faith that offered hope, redemption, and unity. His growing interest in Christianity culminated in his baptism in England, a transformative moment in his life. Though the exact circumstances of Olaf's baptism remain uncertain, many believe it was influenced by his interactions with English missionaries and the deeply rooted Christian culture of Anglo-Saxon England. The resilience and devotion of the Christian monks and priests he had met earlier likely played a significant role in shaping his decision. Some accounts suggest that Olaf may have been persuaded by Ealdorman Ethelweard, a prominent English noble, or other members of the Anglo-Saxon elite who saw an opportunity to convert a powerful Norse leader. Olaf's baptism was more than just a personal religious act. It marked a turning point in his life and ambitions. By embracing Christianity, Olaf aligned himself with the rising tide of Christian influence spreading across Europe. The act also carried political implications, as it connected him with the Christian rulers of England and strengthened his legitimacy as a future leader of Norway in the eyes of both his people and foreign powers. This conversion set Olaf apart from other Viking leaders of his time. While many still clung to the Old Norse gods, Olaf saw Christianity as a unifying force that could help him achieve his dreams of consolidating power in Norway. His baptism became the foundation of his mission to not only reclaim his homeland, but to transform it into a Christian kingdom. For Olaf, this was the beginning of a new identity, not just as a warrior and king, but as a champion of a faith that would redefine Norway and the Scandinavian world.
By 995, Olaf Tryggvason's journey had brought him back to the land of his birth, Norway, with a newfound mission and determination. After years of exile, Viking raids, and his conversion to Christianity, Olaf returned not only as a seasoned warrior, but also as a man driven by a divine purpose. His goal was clear: to claim the throne of Norway and transform it into a unified Christian kingdom. At the time, Norway was fragmented and ruled by powerful regional chieftains and the pagan Earl Hakon Sigurdsson, who held sway over much of the country. Hakon, though a skilled leader, had grown increasingly unpopular among the people due to his harsh rule and perceived moral decline. Discontent simmered across the land, creating an opportunity for Olaf to challenge him. Arriving in Norway with a fleet of loyal warriors, Olaf quickly gained support among the disillusioned Norwegian people. His charisma, military prowess, and claim to royal lineage inspired many to rally to his cause. Additionally, Olaf's promise to bring stability and a new faith, Christianity, gave him an edge over Hakon, whose pagan practices were losing favour among some of the population. The turning point came when Hakon's own men betrayed him. As Olaf's forces advanced, Hakon fled and was eventually killed by his own servant, leaving the throne vacant. Olaf seized the moment, consolidating his power and being declared King of Norway. Olaf's rise to kingship was more than just a political victory. It was the beginning of a new era for Norway. Almost immediately, he set about enforcing Christianity as the kingdom's dominant religion. Using both persuasion and force, Olaf began converting the chieftains and the wider population, dismantling the Old Norse pagan traditions that had defined the region for centuries. As king, Olaf not only sought to unify Norway under one ruler, but also under one faith. His reign marked a dramatic shift in Norwegian history, laying the groundwork for the nation's cultural and religious transformation. Though his methods were often harsh, Olaf's vision of a Christian Norway would shape the country's identity for generations to come.
Once Olaf Tryggvason became king in 995, his mission to unify Norway went hand in hand with a fervent campaign to convert the population to Christianity. Unlike the gradual and often peaceful spread of the faith in other parts of Europe, Olaf's approach was uncompromising and forceful. His vision of a Christian Norway was not simply a matter of personal faith. It was a political and cultural revolution aimed at consolidating his power and erasing the influence of the Old Norse gods. With relentless energy, Olaf traveled across the kingdom, from the fjords of the west to the rugged northern coasts, targeting regions where pagan traditions were strongest. Pagan temples and idols were systematically destroyed, and sacred sites dedicated to the Norse gods, such as those of Odin, Thor, and Frey, were burned or dismantled. In their place, Olaf built Christian churches and brought priests and missionaries to preach the new faith. Olaf's campaign met with significant resistance, especially from powerful chieftains who saw Christianity as an attack on their traditional way of life and their authority. To overcome this opposition, Olaf used a mix of persuasion, rewards, and ruthless punishment. Chieftains who accepted Christianity often received gifts or positions of power within his new Christian kingdom. However, those who refused faced dire consequences. Many were forced to convert at sword point, and those who resisted too strongly were either executed or exiled. One of the most infamous examples of Olaf's methods occurred in Trøndelag, a stronghold of paganism. When local leaders refused to renounce their gods, Olaf captured them and offered a stark choice: convert or die. Tales of forced baptisms and brutal executions spread throughout Norway, striking fear into those who opposed him. Despite his harsh methods, Olaf's campaign was effective. By the end of his reign in 1000, most of Norway had formally converted to Christianity. While some of the population secretly continued to practice pagan rituals, Olaf's establishment of churches and Christian governance laid the foundation for a lasting religious transformation. Olaf's zeal and unyielding determination earned him both admiration and animosity. To his supporters, he was a Christian hero, a king who had brought enlightenment and salvation to Norway. To his enemies, he was a tyrant who destroyed their traditions and ruled with an iron fist. Yet, regardless of perspective, Olaf's reign marked a turning point in Norwegian history, forever altering its cultural and spiritual identity. During his reign from 995 to 1000, Olaf Tryggvason devoted himself not only to enforcing Christianity by force, but also to laying the institutional groundwork for a Christian kingdom in Norway. Recognizing that conversion required more than coercion, Olaf took deliberate steps to integrate Christianity into the fabric of Norwegian society, ensuring its long-term survival and influence. Olaf began by founding churches across Norway, often in areas where pagan temples and sacred sites had once stood. These churches were not merely places of worship, but symbols of the new faith's dominance over the old ways. They became focal points for Christian communities, helping to establish a sense of unity and shared identity among the scattered population. To staff these churches and spread the teachings of Christianity, Olaf sent emissaries to England, Germany, and other Christian nations, requesting priests, missionaries, and clergy. He sought experienced and educated individuals who could not only administer sacraments, but also train Norwegian converts in the doctrines of the new faith. These foreign clergy brought with them the liturgical practices, art, and traditions of Western Christianity, further integrating Norway into the broader Christian world. Olaf also worked to establish the legal and administrative structures needed to support the church's growth. He promoted laws that aligned with Christian values, such as banning pagan sacrifices and establishing Sunday as a day of rest. These reforms helped to entrench Christianity as the moral and legal framework of the kingdom. While Olaf's methods were often harsh, his efforts to consolidate power and spread Christianity were driven by a vision of a united and stable Norway. By tying the church closely to the monarchy, Olaf strengthened his own authority, presenting himself not just as a king, but as a divinely ordained ruler whose power was sanctioned by God. Though Olaf's reign was short, the institutions he established endured, becoming the foundation for Norway's eventual transformation into a fully Christian nation. His churches and clergy continued their work long after his death, ensuring that the faith he so passionately championed would take root and flourish in the centuries to come.
Although Olaf Tryggvason was not the ruler of Denmark or Sweden, his ambitious efforts to spread Christianity extended beyond Norway's borders, influencing the gradual Christianization of Scandinavia as a whole. His reign coincided with a period of religious transformation across the region, and Olaf sought to position himself as a key figure in the spread of the faith, challenging the dominance of local rulers like King Svein Forkbeard of Denmark and King Olaf Skøtkonung of Sweden. In Denmark, King Svein Forkbeard, though initially a staunch pagan, had begun to embrace Christianity under the influence of his allies and political pressures from Christian Europe. Olaf's vigorous missionary activities in neighbouring Norway added to this momentum, creating a sense of urgency for Christianization to maintain regional alliances and legitimacy in the eyes of European Christendom. Olaf's efforts were seen as both a spiritual mission and a political challenge to Svein's authority, as Christianity became a tool for consolidating power in Scandinavia. Similarly, in Sweden, King Olaf Skøtkonung, the first Christian king of Sweden, faced resistance from pagan factions within his kingdom. Olaf Tryggvason actively supported missionaries and Christian communities in Swedish territories, attempting to influence the religious shift there. While he could not directly enforce conversion, his efforts symbolized a broader movement towards Christian unity in the region. Olaf also sought to spread Christianity to the borderlands and disputed territories influenced by both Danish and Swedish rule. Through missionary expeditions, he targeted areas where Norse paganism was still deeply entrenched. These missions sometimes created friction with the rulers of Denmark and Sweden, as Olaf's religious fervour often came across as interference in their realms. Despite political rivalries, Olaf's actions played a significant role in shaping the broader Christianization of Scandinavia. By pushing the boundaries of his influence and challenging the traditional pagan power structures, he contributed to the gradual acceptance of Christianity across the region. His missionary zeal and alliances with foreign clergy helped create a shared religious identity that connected Norway, Denmark, and Sweden to the wider Christian world. Sweden followed their own paths to conversion under their respective rulers. Olaf Tryggvason's vision of a Christian Scandinavia helped accelerate the process. His actions left a lasting imprint, contributing to the eventual unification of the region under the banner of Christianity. Olaf Tryggvason's mission to spread Christianity was not confined to Norway's mainland. His ambitions reached across the North Atlantic, targeting the Faroe Islands, Orkney, and Iceland, key Norse settlements deeply rooted in pagan traditions. These islands held strategic importance, not only for their resources and influence over maritime routes, but also as extensions of the Norse cultural and religious sphere. Olaf's efforts to convert these regions reflected his broader vision of a unified Christian Scandinavia. In the Faroe Islands, Olaf sought to bring the local chieftains under both his political and religious influence. He pressured them to abandon their pagan beliefs and embrace Christianity, often using a mix of diplomacy and coercion. Sigmundur Brestisson, a prominent Faroese chieftain, was a key figure in this effort. Olaf reportedly converted Sigmundur and sent him back to the islands as his representative to enforce the new faith. Though the process faced resistance, Olaf's authority and Sigmundur's efforts eventually brought the islands into the Christian fold. Similarly, in the Orkney Islands, Olaf leveraged his military power to compel the Norse earls to accept Christianity. The islands, long a hub for Viking raids and Norse culture, were crucial to Olaf's plans. He is said to have demanded the conversion of Earl Sigurd Hlodverson, threatening severe consequences if the earldom did not comply. Facing little choice, Sigurd converted, ensuring that Christianity took root in Orkney. However, like in the Faroes, remnants of pagan practices lingered for years despite Olaf's efforts. In Iceland, Olaf's approach was somewhat different. Rather than relying solely on force, he sent missionaries to the island, including Thangbranda, a determined but controversial priest. The missionaries met with resistance from the Icelandic chieftains, many of whom were deeply committed to Norse paganism. Iceland's decentralized political structure, governed by the Althing, National Assembly, made it difficult for Olaf to impose his will directly. However, by 1000, increasing external pressures and the influence of Olaf's missionaries pushed the Icelanders to a turning point. Fearing conflict among the chieftains over religious divisions, the Althing made a landmark decision. Iceland would formally adopt Christianity as the national religion. In a compromise to maintain peace, pagan practices such as private sacrifices were allowed to continue discreetly. This peaceful transition marked a sharp contrast to the violent conversions seen elsewhere. Olaf's efforts in the Faroe Islands, Orkney and Iceland significantly expanded Christianity's reach across the Norse world. While his methods varied, from forceful conversion in Orkney and the Faroes to fostering a peaceful transition in Iceland, his influence reshaped the religious landscape of these islands. The North Atlantic settlements, once bastions of Norse paganism, became integral parts of the growing Christian community in Scandinavia. Olaf's vision for a unified Christian world extended far beyond Norway's shores. His legacy in these islands helped connect the scattered Norse territories to the broader European Christian network, ensuring their cultural and religious alignment with the rest of medieval Christendom.
The reign of Olaf Tryggvason, marked by his ambitious Christianizing mission and his bold leadership, came to a dramatic end in the year 1000 at the Battle of Svolder. This pivotal confrontation would not only mark the end of Olaf's life, but also reshape the political and religious landscape of Scandinavia. By the end of the 10th century, Olaf's aggressive efforts to spread Christianity and consolidate his power had made him many enemies. His forceful conversion campaigns in Norway, the Faroe Islands, Corkney, and Iceland earned him the hostility of both pagan leaders and rival kings. Among his most formidable adversaries were King Svein Forkbeard of Denmark, King Olaf Skutkonung of Sweden, and Eirik Håkonsson, a Norwegian earl who had been displaced by Olaf's rise to power. These rivals, united by their animosity toward Olaf, formed a powerful alliance to challenge his dominance. Tensions culminated in an ambush at Svolder, a narrow strait whose exact location remains debated, but is believed to be in the Baltic Sea. As Olaf sailed home from Vendland, modern-day Poland, with a relatively small fleet, his enemies lay in wait. The Allied forces vastly outnumbered Olaf's ships, creating a dire situation for the Norwegian king. Despite the odds, Olaf refused to surrender. He rallied his men and prepared for a heroic last stand. The battle unfolded with fierce naval combat, showcasing Olaf's legendary skill as a warrior and commander. His smaller fleet fought valiantly, sinking or severely damaging several enemy ships. However, the sheer numerical superiority of the Allied forces proved overwhelming. One by one, Olaf's ships were destroyed and his loyal warriors were killed or captured. As the battle reached its climax, Olaf found himself surrounded. Rather than face capture and humiliation at the hands of his enemies, he chose a fate befitting a Viking king. According to saga tradition, Olaf leapt from his ship, the Long Serpent, into the sea, clad in his armor. Some accounts suggest that he drowned, while others claim he was struck down in the water. Though his body was never recovered, Olaf's death marked the end of his reign and the collapse of his Christianizing crusade. His kingdom was divided among his enemies. Denmark, Sweden, and Eirik Håkonsson's forces carved up Norway, reversing much of Olaf's unifying work. The Battle of Svolder became a defining moment in Scandinavian history, immortalized in sagas and poems as a tale of betrayal, heroism, and tragic loss. For Christians in Norway, Olaf became a martyr-like figure, remembered as a king who gave his life for the faith he sought to spread. His death also underscored the challenges of uniting and Christianizing a fragmented region where rivalries ran deep. While Olaf's reign ended abruptly, his influence endured. The Christian institutions he established in Norway continued to grow, and within a generation, the kingdom would fully embrace Christianity under leaders like Saint Olaf Haraldsson. The seeds Olaf Tryggvason had sown, both as a king and as a missionary, would ultimately bear fruit, shaping the religious and cultural future of Scandinavia.